Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Tanya Pobeda, and today I'm going to be talking about precarity and the post-secondary instructor, or rather, how precarity creates the necessary conditions for economic exploitation, harassment, and career attrition in higher education. I'm also an instructor with disabilities, and I wanted to put in important context as I'm recording this October 10th, 2024, that 1 in 38 Canadians has an active SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 infection at this moment. At the same time, an ever-increasing number of post-secondary employees are employed temporary, part-time, or precariously. Precarity is defined as a state of working either full-time, for low wages, with no or minimal benefits, working part-time involuntarily with no benefits, at low wages, working part-time without benefits, or working on a term or contract role, or working multiple jobs at a very low rate of pay. And that definition is taken from the Government of Ontario. Approximately 430,000 people in Canada work at universities, colleges, vocational and trade institutions, and 54% of faculty appointments in Canada are contract positions. The percentage of full-time university instructors in the wider post-secondary workforce Canada-wide has decreased dramatically over time, at a peak of 19.6% in 1999, so that far back. Today, full-time faculty represent now only 11% of the total post-secondary workforce. Statistics Canada reports that there are 47,799 full-time teaching staff at Canadian University, a number that continues to be overrepresented by male-identifying workers, which hold 57.9% of full-time faculty positions. As noted earlier, the face of Canadian labour is in a state of rapid flux, with more gig-based, temporary, and increasingly part-time workforces. According to Statistics Canada, the total number of working-age women working full-time in Ontario is 76.2%, compared to 87.2% of men. With limited or no career mobility and given intractable structural barriers, women and gender-diverse workers in the Canadian education sector are often mired in low-paying, precarious employment and forced to cope with unsafe working conditions, harassment, bullying, overwork, and burnout. Today, post-secondary instructors are making risk-reward calculations and questioning the value of continuing in precarious academic roles. American studies suggest that 37% of mid-career researchers in higher education are dissatisfied with their jobs, and a survey of provosts suggests that 19% feel they have a higher than average rate of faculty turnover during our ongoing pandemic. Studies have demonstrated that precarious workers are more likely to suffer bullying and harassment. Indeed, structural inequities such as employment precarity often create the perfect conditions for endemic bullying and harassment and the widespread economic exploitation of women and gender-diverse workers in the university system. For women in the post-secondary sector, precarious, part-time, contract work is that statistical norm rather than the exception. And although I'm not at all religious, in the words of Luke 18:25, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. It would appear that it is now easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than go into a full-time teaching job in Canadian academia. The playing field is wildly uneven for women and gender-diverse academics. And today, teaching a single university course in an Ontario university pays approximately $300 a week in take-home income, necessitating taking additional paid employment. In Toronto, you need at least $40 an hour in a full-time job to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. And 1 in 9 Torontonians report needing access to a food bank as a way to stay fed, per the 2023 Toronto Who's Hungry report. As some temporary college and university instructors struggle with multiple jobs and contend with greater and greater amounts of unpaid labor, their ability to fully engage with post-secondary community and the wider world suffers. A respondent to a Canadian Centre for Policy Alternative survey put it this way: "We have many casuals working multiple part-time jobs, trying to stay afloat. It's extremely difficult for them to have any kind of social life, take courses, etc., because they're juggling two unpredictable schedules. The lack of paid sick days is also a big issue, with several casuals being, quote, one sick day away from not making rent," unquote. A recent OPSEU report reports the same thing, and OPSEU is a large union in Ontario. More than half of OPSEU's 44,000 members at colleges and universities are contract or part-time workers with no job security or benefits. They go to work sick, struggle to afford prescription drugs, work at multiple institutions, and put off making major life decisions such as having kids. 53% of sessional instructors at post-secondary institutions want a tenure-track job, but 55% of them dismiss the possibility of getting a tenure-track job within the next 2 years as, quote, not likely at all. The primary reason why it's unlikely is the, quote, impossibility of maintaining an attractive CV and staying competitive in the job market while also teaching on contract, unquote. More and more women are simply giving up on academia and higher education altogether, with the majority citing toxic workplaces as their main reason for leaving. CITIC 2023, a large-scale study of U.S. faculty members, of which 245,000 were surveyed, says as follows. Theories of stress suggest that faculty will use one of two coping mechanisms in response to workplace stressors: approach or avoidance, orienting toward or away from a threat, respectively. Respondents were asked if they left or would leave academia because they were unhappy, stressed, or otherwise dissatisfied with the position. And this is called a push. Or because they were drawn to, excited by, or otherwise attracted to a new position, a pull. Or both. At all career ages, current and former faculty reported feeling pushed out of their jobs at higher rates than they report feeling pulled toward better jobs. However, we also find greater fractions of women in both STEM and non-STEM domains reporting feeling pushed out, and lower fractions that felt pulled toward better jobs than men. Women's odds of feeling pushed were 44% higher than men's, making gender the strongest predictor of feeling pushed. Employment mobility is nearly impossible to achieve when you are struggling to make ends meet, juggling a variety of poorly paid and unpaid jobs, and navigating workplace stress and abuse. For example, during my employment at a university, I nearly always had 4 or 5 small contract jobs, and some for as little as 5 paid hours a week. Despite the low and infrequent and often deeply uncertain pay, the expectations for these jobs were huge. I was contacted at all hours of the days, evenings, and weekends with demands. I do take enormous pride in my work, and I'm always willing to accommodate requests. I did not take a single winter holiday break, reading week, or summer break, save the 2023 winter break due to health concerns during the past 7 years when I worked as a precarious worker in universities. As holidays are often peak work opportunities for gig and contract workers, we don't get a break. The workplace toxicity I experienced during my time in the university system rivaled that of my time working in automotive, military, and STEM private sector environments. In education, I had to act as a de facto bodyguard for a professor, a woman who was regularly being threatened with a violent physical assault by a tenured male faculty member. Working in a non-union role, I was warned by a male professor that I shouldn't ever apply for teaching positions because I was, quote, not enough of a sociopath, unquote, to survive academic faculty workplaces. In another instance, I was paid for only 49 hours for 6 months, or 138 business days of ongoing work. The full-time professor who hired me emailed me with requests at all hours of the day, night, weekends, during this time, and then demanded 15 hours of my previously paid hours back. He got 24 hours refunded instead. In another contract for the same organization, I worked 10 months and was never paid. Not even once. I found out from other academic peers far too late that was simply standard practice at this workplace. Wage theft was common and well known. I simply did not know. I have witnessed and directly experienced that precarious workers have little to no recourse nor opportunity to obtain their rights under these circumstances. Reporting these incidents simply means you're subject to weary skepticism at best and retaliation at worst. If you complain or ask for payment, you're simply not hired again. This is similarly well known that many post-secondary institutions will do nothing when issues are reported to them, particularly if a powerful community member is involved. Thus, precarious academic workers like myself do unpaid and hope work, hoping that if we quietly tolerate wage theft, poor treatment, bullying, and toxic workplaces, we will be rewarded with yet more precarious work to survive for another month. I, like most of my peers, cope by rationalizing difficult or dangerous work as simply a lesson learned. We blame ourselves. We suffer in silence. And we hope for best next time. When we are feeling brave, we whisper our warnings about problematic hiring managers, departments, and work groups to one another. We hope it doesn't happen again, but it does. Whereas tenure-track employees' contracts typically assume that in order to achieve tenure, scholars need to divide their professional activities between teaching and non-teaching scholarly activities, committee and administrative work, sessional instructors' contracts pay only for teaching, just the hours in the classroom. So then, precariously employed academic teaching staff remain caught in the cycle of precarious employment. I have personally had to stop my own academic research while I struggled to make ends meet. My research has been cited by some of the world's top academics, including Dr. Mary Flanagan at Dartmouth College and the New York Times. It has been platformed by Carnegie Mellon OLAB and the Manchester Game Studies Network. My time is instead spent navigating precarity, workplace abuse, the unrealistic hiring demands of managers who are often willing to pay fairly or often at all. I have spent countless unpaid hours acting as my own collections agent and advocating in a fruitless attempt to collect these unpaid wages. This reality simply means that I and many other women and diverse professionals in higher education will be unable to find either stable employment or engage in scholarly research and creative work. The selfsame work that might one day release precarious workers from our current realities of low pay, low level, or unpaid labor. In my 28-year career as a former reporter, account director at multinational PR firms all around the world, as a corporate director who has advised CEOs and wrote their speeches, and today as an online instructor, edtech designer, and STEM project manager, I have never seen as many challenges in the workplace as I have witnessed and directly experienced in Ontario universities. I and thousands of other women and gender-diverse workers like me are the statistics I presented here today. We are the precarious. Our futures are uncertain. I am one sick day away from a missed rent payment. I am putting major life events on hold while I juggle multiple jobs. I am navigating toxic bullying and abuse in university workplaces. And I wanted to thank you for listening to this today. And I'd love to hear from you. What are your experiences in post-secondary? Are you struggling like I am with precarity? Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it.